My name is John Pasfield. The title of this reading will be The Poetic Novel 1, Erich Auerbach 2. Auerbach is A-U-E-R-B-A-C-H, Erich Auerbach 2. This is my book, The Poetic Novel 1, Influences and Elements by John Pasfield. So it's not a book in the traditional sense. You can't buy it in a store on Amazon, but it can be accessed for free on my website, johnpasfield.ca. The essay that I'm going to read from has 12 sections. In this video, I'm going to read from the first 3 sections and then read part of the final section as a conclusion. So as mentioned, the complete essay is available at my website, johnpasfield.ca. So note 13 is the 13th essay in the book, Erich Auerbach 2, and here it is. When I reread recently the comments by Erich Auerbach about the measuring of the stalking imagery into the lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, I had the feeling that there were some interesting passages in Auerbach which I had not discussed in my earlier note. So I decided I would write a second Auerbach note. So there is an earlier note in the same book on his book. I do not seek to understand or explain the ideas of either Erich Auerbach or the ideas and techniques of Virginia Woolf, but rather to explain to myself my own ideas and techniques. All quotations are from Erich Auerbach's book, Mimesis, M-I-M-E-S-I-S, Mimesis, an excellent book by Erich Auerbach. So I use these quotations not to understand what Erich Auerbach thinks or what Virginia Woolf thinks, but as a kind of a diving board to get me into my own ideas, as a stimulus to my own ideas. So here's a quote from Erich Auerbach's book. The important point is that an insignificant exterior occurrence releases ideas and chains of ideas which cut loose from the present of the exterior occurrence and range freely through the depths of time. It is as though an apparently simple text revealed its proper content only in the commentary on it. So that's the quote by Auerbach. You have an action, which he calls an insignificant exterior occurrence, a physical act, the darning of the stocking in that book, to the lighthouse. But then you have the release of all kinds of ideas and images that range through time in the memory of the lady who's doing the darning of the stocking, Mrs. Ramsay. Okay, here's my comment on that quotation. I structure my novels with a series of image categories within image categories. Often, these image categories are image arcs. An arc simply moves through space, which lend themselves to presentation in more than one chapter. What Auerbach refers to as the insignificant exterior occurrence in Woolf is, in my novels, an outer frame, present moment, minor cycle of linked image units. Those are all my own technical terms. They help me to write my books. They don't show up in the books, but they help me to plan and write them. In my latest novels, ever since my 16th novel, Beethoven, the Ninth Immersion, here it is, Beethoven, the Ninth Immersion, a novel by John Pasfield. There have been 8 of these exterior image units per chapter. So if I were writing about the darning of a stocking, a chapter would have 8 sections in which it would be mentioned. In between the 8 would be 7 sections of interior thought, right? Exterior action, darning of the sock, 8 for me. Interior action, the mind ranging all over its past experience, 7 for me. So I'm a little more sort of mechanical, you might say. A little more organized, to say it more positively. Okay. I would not call these insignificant occurrences in my novels, no matter what they might be in Woolf's novels. These occurrences, situations, events, plots, actions, are significant enough to the main character, the writing of the Ninth Symphony for Beethoven. So he's not darning a sock. He's writing the Ninth Symphony. He wouldn't call that insignificant. To serve as the image container or image vessel for a collection of images and image arcs, which when edited, patterned, and considered by the mind of the main character, might aid in the problem-solving quest of the moment for the main character and of the novel for the reader. In the case of Beethoven, during the process of writing his symphony, the quest is in aid of answering two questions. Number one, how did I get here? Which is an evaluation of his entire past. And where do I go from here? Which is looking at all the possibilities of the future. So, pretty big topics. In my novels, the searching process of the mind is not so much released or cut loose from the exterior occurrence, the action of the moment, as it searches through the depths of time. On the contrary, it is the attachment of the searching process of mind to the present moment, of its sense of an insistence on the significance of that particular present moment, that is the premise of the ideal plot of the novel. So the mind isn't leaving the present moment, it's illuminating the present moment in my novels. The depths of time is, in my novels, the memory, that store of information from a lifetime of experience which is available to be turned into imagery of significance by being juxtaposed against other information from the present or the past in aid of the problem-solving situation of the moment. So if people get the idea that modernist novels are about daydreaming, the mind wandering freely through all these images, and not for me, just the opposite of daydreaming. It's problem solving, thinking of all the past of one's life during the present moment in order to solve the present moment problem. Two aspects: how did I get here? Where do I go from here? The memory search element of the mind seeks out information which can be turned into illuminating imagery, a flashlight or a searchlight, by which to aid the present of the mind as a means of allowing the present to go forward positively. Do you walk forward in the dark without a light, a flashlight or a torch? Or do you walk forward through the dark with a flashlight or a torch? Well, for the mind, the torch, the flashlight is imagery, illuminating imagery. So the present moment is never insignificant in my novels. It is not only significant, but is made more significant by being the object of focus for the main character, and in being illuminated by a wider and deeper image context. Right? You go back in your past for imagery, just like you go back for a stronger battery for your flashlight, right? Because it helps you see the possible future better. Certainly helps you see the current present better. The proper content is not informational content, but the thoughts which arise from the juxtaposition of the imagery of the present moment and other images which are created by selecting the information from the past and juxtaposing past and present images and past and present images. The content is information which has only surface meaning on its own and which yields speculative meaning as the sparks of thought leap between the images of present and past. So present and past, okay? You today and you 20 years ago. You today retiring from a job that you've had, and you today in a photograph maybe of your first day on the job. That's juxtaposing imagery from the present and the past, and it releases thought. It calls for speculation as to, well, what's the difference? What was accomplished, what was not accomplished, right? Imagery from past and present juxtaposed. That's what modernist novels are all about. In Woolf, Virginia Woolf, as Auerbach seems to mean, the commentary on the imagery of the measuring of the sock is provided not by prose, but by other juxtaposed imagery. And the commentary is speculative, not authoritative, and not secure. So we never really know. We're just speculating when we have our thoughts. Here's 4 points. The reader is the uber speculator. So the character speculates, the author speculates, but the reader is the largest of the speculators. 2, the reader speculates as to what the characters are thinking. Mrs. Ramsay, James, the Swiss maid, Mr. Banks. 3, the reader speculates as to what the writer or narrator persona is thinking. Virginia Woolf. So you're bigger than the character when you read a book. You're bigger than the author when you read a book. You are the overviewer when you read a book. The reader speculates as to what the juxtaposition of the imagery of the novel and the imagery of the reader's own imagination in juxtaposition suggests about the nature of life as we human beings live it. So because you and I have had so much life experience, then the book To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf means something to us that it couldn't possibly have meant to Virginia Woolf, because the imagery of her novel is juxtaposed with the imagery of our own life experience to create a new image juxtaposition, a new image pattern, right? 3, here's another quote from Auerbach. The ideas arising in consciousness are not tied to the present of the exterior occurrence which releases them. Okay, here's my response to that quotation. Excuse me. Actually, it seems to me the ideas arising in what I would call the multi-consciousness continuum. You're very conscious at one level of your mind, a little less conscious, and then subconscious. There's a continuum from most conscious to least consciousness in our minds. So the ideas arising in what I would call the multi-consciousness continuum are tied to the present of the exterior occurrence, but it is a larger, deeper present. Mrs. Ramsay is not only thinking of stockings at present, but is also thinking of marriage, procreation, death, and their relationship to the passage of time, not only in her own family, but in the human species. It's only the surface presentation of the human experience that suggests that the thought occasion is as trivial as the action occasion seems to be. It only seems to be trivial to be darning a sock. In reality, you're as alive while darning a sock as you are when climbing Mount Everest, right? Because your mind is alive. The techniques suggest that we humans are always thinking on all levels of thought simultaneously. The personal, the societal, the species, and the cosmic. So what if you're darning a sock? You can be thinking of yourself, your family, your society, the human species from beginning to now, and the cosmic. Is there a God? Is there an outer, where does outer space end, and so on? You can be thinking that deeply on that many topics at the same time while darning a sock or climbing Mount Everest. No matter what we are doing or thinking on the surface of life at the moment. Okay. And now here's part of the conclusion to that essay. So I'm not reading the whole essay, but I'll leap to the conclusion. It disturbs me to read laments in literary criticism that literature is in danger or cannot be written because all people in our era do not think alike. One of the greatest illusions in life is that any two people agree. Sit beside a grandparent in your place of worship and consider whether the two of you think alike. You are modifying your heritage as you experience a life that your grandparent would not recognize. Your grandparent, in turn, modified an earlier heritage as he or she experienced a life that his or her grandparents would not have recognized. This is the glory of the human being. I enjoy my church because we think but don't talk religion. I enjoy my country, Canada, because we think but don't talk politics. All repressive societies have operated on the principle that all people should think alike, but that they do not. Hence coercion and repression. Why do we have torture chambers in these dictatorships? Because they know that people don't think alike, and they don't like it. How wonderful to live in an era where there is no synthesis of human thought, except in the dictatorships of the world. The great stain on the past, the 20th century, is that the leaders of various societies believed that all people should think alike and went to war to enforce that concept. We sometimes simplify literature without realizing it because we often of necessity simplify life. In our conscious lives, we feel the need to simplify meaning in order to make the decisions which are necessary for our daily lives. Who to vote for, which gasoline to buy, which soap to use. But in our speculative lives, we do not need to simplify ideas to the point wherein they cease to be complex enough to do justice to the moment, the past, the world, or the universe. So, know when to simplify, know when not to simplify. Okay, that's the essay. Here's a note that I wrote on reviewing this essay for this video presentation. The greatest challenge for any writer of serious literature is to devise a form which allows for many levels of the reading experience. The great triumph of Shakespeare was to devise a form which can be read and appreciated and enjoyed at many levels. We all understand the surface level story of the play Romeo and Juliet. A boy and a girl fall in love, their families are at odds, they marry in secret, a crisis occurs as the girl is forced to marry someone she does not love. The two try to escape from the detrimental situation with tragic results. That's the story, we all understand it. We all understand the surface story of Hamlet. A young man's father dies, he comes home to find that things have changed, he loses touch with his mother, he is spied on by those he trusts, he's asked to undertake a test for which he does not feel adequate, he tries to balance the search for the truth against the need to act, all with tragic results. Well, we understand it as a story. But the greatness of Shakespeare is that this is only one level at which the plays can be appreciated, enjoyed, and understood. These simple stories, simple on the surface, have a built-in complexity which makes them as complex as any of the situations in which we find ourselves living on this earth. So the greatest literature is as complex as life itself. The poorest literature simplifies life the way we do when we decide which can of beans to buy. The human situation is so complex that serious literature dare not simplify itself to the point where it presents mere entertainment, or worse, a falsifying of human experience. But serious literature dare not make itself so complex that it is unapproachable by the very readers about whom it is written. This is the challenge of the serious writer in every era. I have no idea how many great eras there have been. I have no idea how many great writers there have been. What I do know is that success in the writing of serious literature is very rare. So, this is my book, The Poetic Novel 1, Influences and Elements by John Passfield. You can access it for free just by going to my website, johnpassfield.ca, and clicking on the icon. It will appear on the screen. Lastly, I'll just say thank you for watching this video.